Single-player games are awesome and we love them, but let's be honest, there are some things about them that every player hates, and today I've compiled a list of the top 5 things inherent to single-player games that are most frustrating to gamers. Number 5. The difficulty level. Have you ever stumbled across a game which you thought was amazing, but after playing for a while you realized it's too easy or too hard? There are a ton of single-player games which have a difficulty setting that feels kinda off. Sometimes the easy mode feels like it's made for people with Alzheimer's, while the hard mode is something like Dark Souls. I understand that balancing a game's difficulty is not an easy task, but god is it frustrating when it's not done correctly. It can really ruin a game. Number 4. Bad checkpoints. In single-player games, checkpoints are often a preferred mechanic used to save your progress, but sometimes game developers implement checkpoints in the worst way possible. Playing through a long level, finding collectibles and fighting monsters is good fun until you die and you have to redo this again and again just because the checkpoint is hard to find or too far away. Being forced to play through content you already played is a good way to lose your shit, and it's all thanks to badly designed checkpoints. Number 3. Not being able to continue playing after finishing a game. There are games which you finish, uninstall and never touch again. But there are also games where after finishing the campaign, you feel you have the need to play more. In many cases, you have the option to continue playing, whether it's an open world game where you can keep running around, or maybe a game that gives you additional challenge levels after beating the campaign. Many developers, however, choose to deny you this freedom, and it feels like a middle finger to the face. In such cases, you can only play your save file within the main story, and that's it. Even some open world games have this approach, and you can't even roam around aimlessly with your character after the credits roll. I mean, you built an entire virtual world and you don't allow us to experience it after the game ends? Really, developers? Number 2. Loneliness. Playing by yourself is kind of the general idea behind single-player games, but this can be one of their biggest drawbacks depending on how they're made. Sometimes games ask you to farm stuff or ride your horse for a long time with nothing happening around you. Performing unengaging actions like these by yourself can create a frustrating feeling of loneliness, which I'm sure many of you have experienced. In comparison, if you do those same things in an online game, it would still be tedious, but at least you wouldn't feel lonely. Well, that's assuming you have friends to play with. And finally, number 1 and the most frustrating thing about single-player games. They end. What separates single-player games from multiplayer and online games is that they have an ending, and sometimes reaching that ending can be as painful as finishing your favorite TV series or reaching the end of a great book. When you're playing a well-crafted game, you become a part of its world and you can build an emotional attachment to the characters, just like you do with movie characters, so it is natural to be upset when that experience comes to an end. Finishing a good game, especially one with a great narrative for the first time, can be so frustrating as you know that you will never be able to experience it in the same way again. Good thing that doesn't happen with all games. So that was it for this top 5. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you can think of more frustrating things I didn't add, let me know in the comments. Subscribe and join me next time for another gaming top 5.